Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for GP Payroll Year End Close. It's my pleasure to introduce your speaker, Debbie Gurnitz. She's a senior business consultant for us at Lbmc Technology Solutions. If you, I don't think there's anyone who has had a more diverse accounting background than Debbie. She's held positions as MIS director, financial analyst, accounting manager, budget administration, controller, and CEO. She owned her own business, and she still does today. And she founded that business right out of college. She graduated from Lamar University with a degree in accounting and computer science. She has worked in the GP consultant capacity for several Great Plains resellers, but we were lucky enough to snag her, and has ventured to the frozen tundra of Fargo, North Dakota to attend Great Plains University. Debbie will be presenting or she did present at Community Summit, and today we'll be presenting on year-end close. So Debbie, the presentation is all yours.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm going to start with, this is what our agenda is going to be. We're going to go through some important notes, some year-end tasks, steps to create and reconcile the year-end wage file to payroll records, other payroll tips, alignment issues, rate changes, and any questions at the end of the slide deck. I do have some information about LBMC. I'm not technically going to go over it. It's just going to be part of the handout that you're going to get. Now, talking about the handout, instead of making y'all have writer's cramp and trying to keep up with everything I'm saying, I'm going to print this PowerPoint with my notes that I have on the different slides, and they will be given to you so that you don't have to sit here and try to write the different websites, the different locations to do things. You're going to be getting it all. So with that being said, I'm going to start with important notes. So here we go. Just so this is information, we're not doing any legal capacity. This is the information that we normally give out to everybody to do their year-end close, just so you know that. If the FICA, Social Security, and Medicare tax rates do not change for the new year, you could choose to process a payroll or two for the new year using the previous year tax tables if you need additional time before creating your year-end file. That being said, there are changes in 2025 in the wage limits. And so that if you import and update the tax tables for 2025 and need to go back and build your year-end wage file, you're going to have to make sure you set things back to the limitations of 2024. And we will be going through how to do those processes. But just realize that the tax tables will change and the limitations on how much your gross wages are that are going to be taxed is greater in 2025. So for Social Security, it's going to be up to 176,100. For Medicare, you're going up to the first 200,000. And if you're doing a joint return, it's the first 125,000 for each married taxpayer. So those are what those changes are going to be. Your federal state withholding rates would still be last year rates if you have not updated your tax tables, but in most cases would be materially correct. If you need to install payroll tax tables for the new year, you will need to be sure that you correct the FICA Social Security rates and limits back to the 2024 rates. And this is the location to go do it. So this is why I wanted to tell you not to write all this stuff down that you're going to get the handouts, because there's going to be lots of locations like this that I have given you where to go to make the changes. When you're ready to update your tax tables, you can do it yourself. You're going to update the payroll tax tables by logging into GP as the SA user. Then you're going to go to Microsoft Dynamics and we're going to go check for tax updates. Choose the automatic method and follow the instructions on the screen. And it only needs to be installed one time for your entire system and may be done from any workstation on any company. You want to verify that the tax tables were updated. So you're going to go to the payroll tax and look in the upper right-hand corner and see if it's changed. Normally that release date is going to have a December date. So if you do it in the beginning of January, you're looking for a December 2024 date for that tax table. The payroll tax update notes. If you get errors during the update, try doing it directly on the SQL Server, or you can contact us, and I've listed how to get to us. 1, you can open a ticket, or 2, you can write tech help at LBMC to let us know that you've got a problem and you need help getting that tax table in. You will need to know your registered GP telephone number to get this to work. If you don't need that, don't know that, then you need to get with us so we can help you locate that correct phone number. We can also process them manually, which is very painful, or with a SQL script if it doesn't work with the automated method. It's a good idea to update your tax tables periodically throughout the year to be sure that you have the latest tax tables on. And you do not want to process the tax tables after 12/15 if you have not completed your last checks for the year 2024. Or if you haven't created your year-end file yet. It's important that the first round of tax tables for the new year usually release around 12/15. If you can update the tax tables after 12/15, you may get tax tables for the new year. Do not update the tax tables until you are done processing 2024 checks. Usually, we would want you to validate the 2024 year-end wage file also before installing this. But if the new Social Security Medicare maxims are not changing, and we know for 2025 they are, the timing would not be so sensitive about what is done for the year-end prior to installing this. So you need to be careful this year because we do have wage maximums that are changing. The payroll year-end close and W-2s do not need to be done prior to installing this. It should be installed prior to building, calculating, and printing checks for your first checks dated in 2025. If you install this in order to have it on the printing of your checks for the new year and still need to create your year-end file for the old year, remember that we have to update the FICA Social Security maximum manually back to the previous year's maximum temporarily while you create the year-end file. So a lot of people will do this little piece, go ahead and calculate the 2025 checks. I'm not going to get to it to the first or second week of January. They'll go back, tell people in payroll not to be calculating or building anything. Make the change I need to make, build the year-end wage file. Soon as I have the year-end wage file and have printed my report, go back and go change the maximum back to the 2025 or the current year that you're in, maximum so that you can continue to print and calculate 2025 checks. So you also want to verify whether there is a year-end service pack update that needs to be installed. If there is a year-end update and you qualify to need it to be installed, it does not need to be done prior to the 1/1 payroll necessarily. But it does need to be done prior to when you create the year-end wage file and prior to updating the tax tables. Installing the year-end update and updating the tax tables are two separate items. So if you ask us to help you, you need to be specific that you want us to do the year-end update and or you want us to update the tax tables. So if you just want us to do the update, you tell us that. If you want us to do both, you need to tell us that as well. Because if you tell us to do the update, the engineers don't necessarily do the tax table updates without asking you first if you want them to do it. So don't assume that they're going to do it for you. Now, the big caveat to all of this is we need you to contact us. If you're even going to install it yourself, that service pack update, the year-end update, we need you to contact us because we need to make sure that you do not have any what's called companion products, third parties, and any customizations that might be on your system that are compatible with the new year-end update. If not, you can have lots of problems, and we don't want to see that happen to you. So, employers now be required to report the aggregate cost, which we know we have to do these days, of the employer and the employee portion or COBRA premium of group health insurance on the W-2 in the box 12 code DD. There is an IRS website out there that details more information about doing this and regarding the rules. If you need assistance setting up the benefit codes in GP Payroll, let us know. We can help you get that done so everything runs correctly. And if you've not been calculating this throughout the year, a one-time manual check adjustment or beginning balance entry type will be required after codes are set up to assign to the new employees. Or you can just manually enter the information directly in the Edit W-2s window. Now, there's a caveat to this. If you edit the W-2s and you decide you have other problems and somebody's gone in there and fixed the 12DD on every employee, and you go back and you rebuild the year-end wage file, you've just now wiped out all of your edits to the W-2s. So be very careful on if you do edits to the W-2s because you can wipe out anything that you have done previously. Be sure that the GP user date is a date within the new year while building, calculating, and printing checks. For some of these reports that you're going to use to do your year-end wage file reconciliation, you need to go back and change the date in the bottom left-hand corner, your user date, to be 12/31/2024, so I can do it. But I'm sitting in January and I need to calculate checks. If I manually changed it to be 12/31/2024 to run some year-end or period-end reports for the prior year, and I do not change it, then my checks when I build and calculate is using 2024, and it would put additional information in 2024 instead of in the proper year. So if I fail to do this, I can cause FICA tax to be incorrect for employees over the limits and could update summary tables for the incorrect year. So your user date is very important when I'm trying to run checks for 2025. So be very careful. Always check that date prior to building, calculating, and printing checks. The payroll year-end tasks are independent from other GP modules. So I'm going to pause here for a second. Does anybody have any questions so far?
I'm checking both the QA and the chat, and I don't see any, Debbie.
Okay, then I'm going to move forward and we're going to go through some of the pre-year-end tasks. So we're going to start about some of these steps that need to happen. We need you to purchase your W-2 forms. Now, we have a site that we recommend because we have good luck with those forms and we don't have to do a lot of alignment or changes to the forms. And in the handout that I'm going to give you, it gives you the site that we've had a lot of good luck with. So you can use any that you want, but if you're going to order and haven't done, you might want to check it out so that you don't waste too many forms. But a lot of people will just go to Office Depot or one of those to get their forms, if not getting a whole bunch. So kind of think that through. We need to install the year-end update service pack as soon as it's released, and it has been already. And you don't need to wait until the last payroll has been processed to install this, but there should not be any bill checks or calculate checks in the queue prior to putting the update on. You need to have nothing in the build, nothing in the calculate, nothing ready to print, so that we can do the update, because it would not update your system correctly if you have something in that queue. So when you ask us to do it or y'all try to do it yourself, make sure that you have no payroll in process. You can have a batch that is out there, but I just can't do the build, the calculate, or the print. It cannot be in one of those statuses for the update to be put on. And remember, you want to contact us to see if you have any customizations or third parties that have not been updated to the newest version of Great Plains. In this handout that you're going to get, there are a lot of steps. I think there is about 10 steps that need to happen. And a lot of it has to do with checking versions, checking third parties, making sure we have backups, make sure that we download and save all of your reports dictionaries. There are a lot of steps that have to happen so that we don't lose anything in this process. The next thing we need to do is look at your magnetic media. You need to get to this ssa.gov and make sure that you've updated or renewed your password so that you can upload your files up to them, all the forms. And the rules are that if you have 10 or more forms, which include your 940, your 941s, your W-2s, your W-3, your 1099s, your 1096, your 1095Cs, all of those count. So if you think about it, I have 5 forms right off the gate in payroll. My 940 and 4 941s. That's 5 forms that you have to file. That is your first 5. That gives you 5 more forms. If I have 3 employees, that's 6 forms, because I have a W-2 and I have the 1095C, Affordable Care Act. So I've got 6 there. So that makes me 11 right out of the bat with 3 employees. Unless you are a very small mom and pop with only 2 employees, you might squeak by, never have to do a 1099. You might squeak by and be able to do it manually. But anymore, if it's 10 or more, you have to do everything electronically. That being said, accounts payable group, you might want to tell your friends in the accounts payable department that they need to make sure that they've logged in to IRS make sure their 1099 login is working, just like you're doing to check that your Social Security login is working and your password has not expired, and you can get everything fixed so you can do your uploads, because they're going to have the same problem you do about getting files up if their passwords don't work. So please let your cohorts in the accounts payable department know that they need to be double checking theirs as well. For your 1099 people, your AP department, let them know that LBMC has some scripts to pull your data out to help configure, to be able to push this stuff up electronically if they don't already have a different third party that they're going to send the data into for their 1099s to be printed and to be pushed into IRS. So if they have not bought another program to put this information in that will generate their file that needs to be put into IRS, then reach out and we can help you with that as well. So you're going to want to record any non-cash taxable benefits to include on the W-2s. Some people will give some bonuses. They give a Christmas party and give a $500 bonus, and they want it back on the employee record, and they are going to go in and put that as a benefit and have it a taxable benefit for the employee. So that's an example of what some people will do. So that stuff would need to be entered and put in before I generate that year-end wage file. And doing that, you want to make sure you have a pay code that is unique just for that situation. And you want to make sure that you put the subject to taxes on the boxes on that new benefit code, pay code, whichever way you decide to put it in, would have to make sure it had the proper taxes marked so that it would show up as taxable wages for the employee and get taxes on it. All right, so we need you to verify the W-2 box numbers and labels. So on a record, I would go in and make sure that the labels are right. And if I wanted to double check which box numbers to choose, here's the site that you can go and find that information. The box labels and numbers, the most common ones used are going to be for 401k, disability benefits, etc., as well as for your insurance. Those are the most common ones used. And to set it up, you're going to be going to the HR and payroll setup, payroll deductions. If you make changes only to the box numbers, these little squares here at the bottom, or either one of these windows, and you say yes to roll it down, it's only making changes to those two fields when you run it down. Our best suggestion is you take a copy of your database and you bring it over to a test environment and you make the changes over there and run it through to make sure all the employees' records are correct. In running it in the test environment, you can print a record before and after to verify that you didn't make any changes, you didn't wipe out any of the settings for the 401k that somebody might have 3% and somebody else might have 10%, whatever it may be, that all those percentages are still the same. You know that you did the process correctly. So we recommend that you do it in the test environment prior to doing it in production to make sure that you're hitting the buttons correctly, rolling things down correctly, and not wiping out settings on all of your employees. We need you to verify your federal and state employer ID numbers. These numbers will print on the W-2s. And if they're not correct, you're sending bad information to federal as well as state locations, and we've got to make sure our numbers are correct. So on this screen here is where I'm going to choose Fed for the federal, and I'm going to go double check it to make sure it's right. And then I'm going to choose each state, and I'm going to double check that this tax ID number is correct. Those will be the numbers that will be on your forms. If I need to double check my unemployment ID numbers, there's a different location to do it. That location is to go to Tools, Setup, Payroll, Unemployment Tax, and you would choose the FUTA and the SUTA and make sure that you update them correctly. SUTA, you would choose each state and make sure you make them all correct. So let's talk about statutory employees. You would go to this location to go to payroll, go to taxes, and I'd be choosing each employee individually. You want to mark this statutory employee if the employee is subject to FICA withholding, but not federal withholding. Otherwise, you leave it blank. The retirement plan box will mark automatically on the W-2s if the deduction code is marked properly with the W-2 box and label. If the employee is eligible to participate in a retirement plan, but is not participating, has no retirement deduction, you can mark this box if you need it marked on the W-2s, that they had the opportunity to sign up, but they didn't, and I wanted it marked just to have it there. You could come in and check the retirement plan and it would show up on the W-2. You're going to need to set up the fiscal periods for the new year. So you'd put in the 2025, first date is 01/01/2025, last day is 12/31/2025 if I'm running a calendar year. Or you're going to use yours. If you're using a fiscal year, you might not have to do this step yet because you're not running a calendar year. But those running a calendar year need to make sure the new year is out there. Once I put in the information, I'm going to say calculate, and all this down below is going to fill in. Most of us say close all and then go back and unclick just the first period so that the boxes are open and people can start posting into the new period. So my next step is make sure I complete my final paycheck run for the year. I'm going to plan to have other users out of Great Plains payroll windows when the year-end files are being created. A lot of people will wait and do it or tell people at lunchtime to get out of the system. I'm going to run my payroll year-end file so I can work with it in the afternoon, and just tell people to log out of Great Plains and take it over for an hour while they're gone. Some people will stay late or come early to get their files so they don't disrupt anybody working. But you need to make sure that nobody has a payroll window open. They can be in other things, just not payroll. Be prepared to do periodic backups throughout the day before or after any process that would take a long time to redo. That's wonderful, but if other people are working, I really can't put an old backup back on if I'm not stopping and redoing it. So at this point, I'm going to pause again. Does anybody have any questions?
Let's see. Yes, there is one question. Is there a year-end checklist?
I have one that will be coming to you as a handout. Post this presentation, and you're also going to be getting this presentation with all the extra verbiage, and you will be getting an Excel file that helps you reconcile with. So there will be some handouts that you will get that has the checkoff list and a few extra goodies.
Very good.
All right, since there's no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and start the steps to create and reconcile the year-end wage file. And for most people, this is where they get buried trying to get things fixed because they've got a problem. So we're going to start working our way through this. Our first task is to back up your company databases. Most of us can't get to that. People in the payroll department have to go ask their IT department to say, please go give me a backup so that I can move forward. So be prepared or put them on notice on this day. I'm going to need you to have good backups and confirm that you have them. They need to do all databases using payroll in the Dynamics database. Most of us just tell them, back up every database. I want you to save it in a location where I know where they are, and you give me the file location that has all of them. And I want to name it pre-year-end payroll backup. and put underscore dynamics, do the same thing for each one of the databases so I know exactly which one it is. And most people would have them build a folder maybe called pre-year end payroll backup and put all of them inside that folder. So next thing we're going to do is print pay code summary, deduction summary, benefit summary, state and local tax summary information. All this information is needed as we're going through and doing some of the reconciliations. And this is where you're going to go do it. And this is the date range. If I'm already into the new year, remember I need to go to the bottom left-hand corner and change it to 12/31/2024 to be able to run this. Otherwise, it's going to run for the current year. You also want to make sure that you have your quarter reports handy. I need quarter 1 through 3, what you've already sent in for the year so far. And I'm going to need quarter 4 generated so I have that report. This information is going to be put into that Excel that I told you you're going to get so you can use it to reconcile with. So now then, I need to go generate the year-end closing and get my year-end wage file. So to do that, I'm going to go to routines, payroll, year-end closing, and I have to choose which year that I want. So I'd be choosing 2024 and putting in there, and I'll be hitting process to get that file. But you do not want, you could do it now, but it wouldn't be everything if you still have a December 31st payroll. Or you can wait and do it at the end of, or on December 31st, or start in 2025 to get it done. This process doesn't print a report, but our next step is going to tell you how to print the report because we need information from that report to use to reconcile with. What we suggest is you run this, ask somebody to do another backup, and hold that backup so we have my year-end wage file. We want you to print the last page of the year-end wage file. So we're going to go right beneath where we were before, and we're going to go to year-end wage report and choose the report, and we're going to print it. The next thing we need to do is run the validation report because when I did that year-end wage file, it generated my W-2s for 2024. And I need to go validate to see what type of problems there might be. Some of the problems might be Social Security numbers. I might have pennies that are wrong. I might have addresses they say are too long that I need to go fix. But normally there are some that are just pennies off, which are rounding, which we ignore, and we do all of the other problems and work those and get it fixed. Once we fix those on the record, we went back to the employee's address and fixed it. We went in and fixed the Social Security number because it wasn't a valid number. We have everything fixed. I'm going to go back to the step where I generated the year-end wage file, and I'm going to delete the one that I have and rerun it for this year so that I now have all of my changes. The next thing I'm going to do is come back. If I had to make changes, rerun that validation report. So you're going to go back and forth and do this until you're down to only fractions of cents problems. If I have Social Security problems, that tells me my calculations aren't right, and they're off more than just pennies, then you want to keep the file, and we're going to get to the steps that you're going to use to fix that problem. But get all the addresses and Social Security numbers fixed and get a good file from that point, and then we fix the other problems. So we're going to take all this information. This is a screenshot from that Excel that I'm going to give you. And in it, I'm going to be putting my quarterly information in. And I'm putting my wages in for these different ones so I have all the quarters in. And then up above this red area, it says section 4, 1, 2, and 3 have the answers. It'll drop into these red cells and we'll let them drop in. And then we're going to put the year-end wage information. We're going to subtract. It's going to tell me if I have any variances. You're looking for all these to be zeros. If they're not zeros, then we have to start working the problems. So if we have incorrect taxable wages, most of this will come down to I have pay codes or deduction or benefit codes that were incorrect. The changes were made at the employee and it was not copied from the master records. If I need to have a payroll for an employee that needs to have a little bit different rules than a normal pay code, I should have set up a pay code that was unique that could be assigned to that employee to have a different taxing rule. Because my reports will not balance if I use a pay code differently or a deduction or a benefit different for an employee versus what the company setup rules are. If the tax boxes at the employee level does not say yes to use the default from setup with adding a code, then this will cause problems. So let's say that employee wants no federal or state taxes withheld. A payroll user goes in and unmarks the subject to tax boxes on the employee's pay code. This will cause the employee's taxable wages to be incorrect. Withholding amount should be adjusted in the tax information window instead. It's where I'm going to go make that correction. Following the guidelines, this will fix the tax boxes or the TSA sheltered from tax boxes. Should never be changed in the employee pay code, deduct code, or benefit. They should always be consistent with the setup. A payroll transaction didn't have the state or pseudo-state filled in appropriately. So let's say that my state taxes are incorrect. Normally there is a transaction out there or more than one that did not have the state filled out, so it did not calculate correctly. A payroll adjustment was keyed in incorrectly. Or there was some type of system issue when generating a payroll. Those are the most common reasons why I do not tie out when I'm reconciling. So we're going to talk about reconciling. The payroll summary report is not always accurate. And the tables that hold the data for this report are not always updated properly if there have been manual adjustments. Now, there's manual adjustments that somebody did SQL on or they did a manual check. Sometimes things get off. So if I'm running the reports and looking at it for period end and it's not right, I might have the same problem with federal wages not being the same as the table for the W-2s numbers are pulled from different tables in what the other wage report is. So fixing the field in the employee summary does not fix the W-2s, which is a piece that people don't understand. But I fixed the summary. It didn't fix the W-2s because the summary is just a summary table, whereas the data that's being pulled on the W-2s is those detailed transaction tables, not the summary tables. It is safer to do the reconciliation against either the 941 or the year-end wage report, since those amounts are what actually land on the tax reports that are submitted. And those are the files that are being used to generate your 941s, your 940s. It's coming from the detail. The year-end wage reports being pulled by the detail, the 941s being pulled from the detail. And a little tidbit, FICA Medicare wages should equal the total pay code summary less the pre-tax deductions from deduction summary report other than the 401k plus taxable benefits. So if you ever want to know how the system calculates the FICA Medicare wages, this is your math. FICA Social Security wages may be lower than FICA Medicare wages because of employees who earn above the FICA Social Security maximum taxable wages. In most cases, if a code is subject to FICA Medicare, it's also subject to FICA Social Security, so the difference between these two totals can be attributed directly to employees over the FICA Social Security tax max. The federal wages should generally be FICA Med wages less retirement deductions, not Roth. State and local wages usually equal the federal wages. So this information on this slide gives you a lot of math, how things are calculated and how they fall off into your reports. So when you're trying to reconcile, you might want to flip over to this to find out what the math is, or look at the page on the PDF that I'm going to be sending you. All right, additional steps for year end. You want to verify that the box 12 totals on the year-end wage report are correct by comparing to the totals for the appropriate codes on the deduction summary and benefit summary reports. So if you go to the last page of the year-end wage report and it gives you a total for 12DD, you would go over and add up all the codes that are set up to be 12DD or 12D or whatever letter you're looking for. You make a list of the pay code, deduct codes that make up these values, and I can sit there and add them up to see if they are correct. Some people have us modify their report, the summary report, to drop in what box they belong on. So if you don't want to be fixing it every year and figure out what's being used, you can modify the report to pull those box numbers onto a report. Verify the appropriate retirement boxes are marked on W-2s. You want to verify the employer numbers are properly filled in for federal state IDs. So earlier we had you go in and make sure those tax IDs were filled in on the proper cells. Now we want to make sure that they're showing up on the reports as you're looking at them. So that's what this step is. We've set up the setup information. Now we want to verify that's showing up over here on the year-end wage file on the W-2s. If any of the above isn't correct, we want to remove the year-end wage file, fix the issues, then recreate the year-end wage file again. Which is why I alluded to earlier, if I'm adjusting the 12DD boxes as an example, and I went through and fixed them all, I would not want somebody to do this step and rebuild it. Or I'm going to want somebody to dump all the information out and then write tech support to us and ask us if we could SQL script this information back in for you, which we can, okay? But if you put in lots of changes, you might want to dump what you have out and and then request that we push it back in for you after they rebuild the file. If I'm making changes to any of the 12DD, 12D, 12 whatever letter, and you want that back in, your solution would be to dump it out and ask us to SQL script it in for you. So verifying the tax sheltered annuity, TSA, settings on pay codes, deductions, and benefits. Any of the situations where tax boxes were marked differently on the employee maintenance level causes problems. If you want to have a separate pay code, deduction code, or benefit code for any records that need to be taxed differently than the majority, you do not want to change the tax settings at the employee level from what is on the setup record of a pay code deduction benefit. There are reports and smart list builder objects that can be built for you to look through to see if you have some problems. To fix this, the method is to adjust the FICA taxable wages because of pre-tax deduction marked incorrectly. It will depend varying on the situation, but normally the solution needs to be tested in a test company prior to rolling out the change in production. Normally, you offset any changes to FICA by adjusting the federal withholding. So let's say something should have been taxable, but I didn't tax it. I'm going to take the tax that I should have taken out that should have been FICA. I'm going to reduce my federal withholding and I'm going to bring it over to the FICA field. That fixes the employee portion. It does not fix the employer portion. You're still going to have to pay it. It's going to be there, but it's going to show up in your 941 that you owe for money that hasn't been paid in because you didn't pay your side of it yet. So if you need to do an employee by employee verification comparing federal wages to state, we have found that if you modify one of the W-2 one-wide formats in the report writer so that all the important numbers in employee ID are printed on one line, then print this report to a file. This works great if I'm trying to go in and figure out why somebody is different. You can print the W-2s, and I can print the state wage report and compare this information to what I'm seeing in that exported file. Normally we say print these and send them out as common delimited, and then I can do some VLOOKUPs against the W-2 file that I just did, and I can go find where my variances are. The federal wages listed on employee summary are not from the same table as the W-2 numbers are pulled from. So remember, fixing anything on the employee summary does not fix the W-2s. As I said before, the employee summary is one table where the detailed transaction information, think of it as the rows that you put in a batch to get their time put in. Those rows are different than the summary rows. And the W-2s, the year-end wage file, is looking at those detail rows to pull the information in to calculate the W-2s using the settings that you have for your company. If both the federal and FICA wages are off, the problem probably lies somewhere in a pre-tax deduction or pay code having tax boxes marked incorrectly. And when we're saying marked incorrectly, we're saying that the company or the setup records in payroll have one set of rules, whereas the employee record has another set of rules. And that is why you're having problems. They're not the same. In that scenario, we do have some SQL commands and we have some smart list builder reports that can be added in that has the company settings in one set of columns where we have the employee settings and another set of columns so that you can see what actually happened on those transactions. So we do have some things in our tools to help you find where your problem lies and which employee has the problem. If only federal wages are off, it's normally because of 401k deduction. You want to remove the year-end file and make corrections. So here we go again. If I do that, remember, if I made any manual adjustment on the W-2s at all, it gets wiped out. You want to make any corrections necessary to reconcile, and you're going to repeat the steps and go through the reconciling again. I'm going to go back to the Excel. I'm going to put the new numbers in. I'm going to look at it. Does everything tie out yet? This process is repeated until you can get that Excel file to have zeros across the bottom, or I only have pennies. Now let's talk about creating that magnetic media file. Remember our little rule that if I have 10 cumulative forms going to the government, I have to do electronic. And that is made up again of 940s, 941s, W-2s, W-3s, 1096, 1099, and your 1095Cs ACA. So if the sum of all that is 10 or greater, then I'm required to do all processes electronically. So I'm going to electronically send my W-2s in. I'm going to electronically send in my 1099s and my 1095Cs. Most states you require an electronic file with a format different than what SSA accepts. So a lot of companies will use a third-party companion product to produce that file. If you need help producing that file, we do have formats for some states, and we can normally easily make one for a different state if we haven't already made it before. So reach out to Tech Help or open up a ticket so we can help you get what's needed to get to your state government to turn in your state taxes. You're going to want to launch the AccuWage program, which is an IRS program, to push the files in. There are other options that they now allow as well to push the file in. So you might not have to launch AccuWage. You might be launching to IRS site or Social Security site and pushing in the file that we have created. If I have a problem and I need to redo it, there is a way to resubmit as well on their site. Edit W-2s. You want to do any final manual edits needed in the W-2s, like the 1095Cs. So I've got my wage file out. I've got all the wages right, but now I'm working on my 1095Cs. So a lot of people will get the wage file out, come back and work on the 1095Cs. Because the deadline for the 1095Cs historically has been after the due date for getting my W-2s up to the government. That being said, I can go in and I can edit the 1095Cs. And if I have problems in my 1095Cs, I am not wanting to ever remove the build and resubmit and build the file again, because that would cause me to have a problem with the W-2s I've already sent to the government. So you just want to edit the W-2s, export the information, print and export information, and send the data in. So I now need to print those W-2s and hand out to my employees. Some people do this a little bit different. They might say that I forgot everything. I know it balances. I'm still waiting to get my Social Security password corrected. I'm going to go ahead and print my W-2s. Then I'm going to worry about sending it up and worry about my 1095Cs. But you have to make sure that every one of these are ticked off that you took care of it. I did print it and give it to my employees. I did import it. I did get my 1095Cs in. So this is where those tick off lists become important. But you don't want to print those W-2s until you know my file is reconciled. So we're going to want you to go print all of your W-2s, and we're going to go to Tools, Routines, Payroll, Print W-2s. You want to choose the correct format of the W-2s in the lower right-hand corner, and you want to print it to the screen so you can see and reprint as easily as many times as you need. We normally ask you to print a test, the one that has all the X's on it. And take one of your W-2s, go put it on your printer, Xerox it a couple times, and do that fun, let's hold it to the sky and look to see with the X's behind it, how well does it line up? You're going to want to fix those so everything lines up inside of it. We're going to go through the steps of how to fix it and move things around in a minute in case I have alignment issues. But that is basically what you're going to want to do before you print all of those W-2s so you do not waste forms. If you're using an employee portal where employees can view or download the W-2s, you can skip the piece here about printing W-2s. I am going to want to print a W-3 if you're not following magnetic media. I'm going to want to make sure I've got that magnetic media sent up to Social Security so I can go up there and verify that my file is being accepted. So if I've sent it up there, normally you need to go back and verify that they accepted my file. So you want to go back to the site to verify that it's been accepted. You're now going to want to install the payroll tax tables for the new year if you have not already done so. And I would at least go verify that my date that my file has a December of 2024 date, which tells you you've got the correct one. And knowing that you might have made adjustments to the maximum of the Social Security taxable wages, Medicare taxable wages, you would want to go look and verify that the rates are correct if you were changing it and rebuilding that year-end wage file. The probability of somebody in the first month of January meeting the maximum is almost nil. I've never heard of such a thing yet, but it is normally one of those things I always tell people to go back and do because you get busy and you forget to go put the maximum in and it quits calculating later in the year and it should be taken out. We want to verify the FUTA and SUTA taxable wages are correct. I have a lot of steps on this. So you're going to want to print the FUTA and SUTA reports in the total wages. If the total wages do not easily reconcile to the federal taxable wages, check the settings in HR and payroll, unemployment tax, and look at the code for federal. And at each state, you have employees that have wages in them. Confirm the tax shelter deduction codes are to be included as FUTA and SUTA taxable wages. There are newly added pre-tax deduction code. It might not have been inserted, so check for that. Confirm whether your pay code are set up to be included in FUTA and SUTA taxable wages. So that's going to be back in the setup information again. And if all settings are correct, then it's possible that one or more payroll transactions were posted with a blank or wrong FUTA code. So at that point, you're going to want to use Smart List and review the transactions to see if the transactions had a pseudocode assigned to it. You're going to want to adjust the SUTA and FUTA code individually on employee historical payroll transactions and re-pull the report again. If there's mass changes that need to happen, then we suggest that you reach out to us so a script can be ran against the table and update records as needed, which we can do so y'all don't have to manually try to fix things. Once we run the SQL script, you can rerun your SUTA and FUTA, make sure that my totals are correct, and you'd be through with this piece. You're going to want to print your 1095Cs and any reports required. And you would go back to the print W-2s to do this task. And after you've got these 1095Cs out, you're finally finished with the year-end close for 2024. So that being said, I'm going to pause here to see if anybody has any other questions.
I'm just checking the Q&A, and Debbie, there aren't any questions there. So I think we can forge ahead.
Well, let's forge ahead. We are so close to hitting the bottom, guys. All right. So we're going to do some other tips. If you already loaded the tax tables for the new year and then need to recreate the year and wage file, remember each time I've done this, I keep saying you want to double check the Social Security wage limits, make sure it hasn't changed. So this is one of those I keep hounding on because it can cause problems on the calculations for the W-2s you're trying to do, and it's going to cause problems for the new year. So you got to double check that you've got the right rate in, no matter which way you're looking at doing things, either building the year and wage file, or do I have the correct rate for the 2025? So you'd go to this location, you choose the tax code that you want to look at, and this is how you go about doing it. So I'm going to choose it. I'm going to choose my FICO Social Security. I'm going to go down and look at it. And I'm trying to get to this table. So there's quite a few little steps along the way to get there. And last step is I'm going to verify this rate that's circled in green way down here at the bottom. And I'm going to verify that it is the correct maximum that's in there. So you want to print quarterly reports after the year is done. You want to change your GP system date to reflect the year for which you need to print the quarterly reports. So I'm going to print quarterly reports again. The date would be way down here in the bottom left. I'd be changing that date. Print the reports. This piece here, you notice says optional. Most don't wish to remove historical information from employees unless they're running out of hard disk space. And so I always tell people, if I'm getting close on space, I normally ask IT to give me some more space on my server so that my files can continue to grow. Because I might need to print something for somebody because they need it for whatever reason 5 years ago. And if you purge some of this inactive information, you won't be able to readily get to it unless you print it as a PDF and you have to go find it. So most people don't redo this step, but it is out there and it's generally used for when people are running out of space. If you're using human resources attendance or employee self-service is being used, pay codes or pay schedules for the next year might need to be set up. Some time clock programs like Time Matrix, which is used with Winsoft / Key to Act programs, will also have this problem. You need to set up pay periods for the next year. If using GP PTO Manager, You may need to do a year-end process to implement auto calendar year calculations. So if I want to readjust it and have it start for my accruals for the new year, I'm going to run this PTO manager. I'm going to move ahead into alignment issues. This is where, when I did that looking up to the sky with my W-2s and my X's are not lining up correctly, I might need to be able to print my W-2s to the screen again and adjust things. I need to raise it. I need to lower it, or left or right. I need to move it around. Well, to be able to do that, I need this print dialog box. It doesn't appear for you normally right now because it's turned off. But you just have to change a command to make it happen. Now, the trick to all this is I cannot make a change to this Dex INI file. Let's say I'm on Citrix or I'm on a remote desktop and I log in that way, and Great Plains is not on my C drive on my computer. Okay. I cannot go in and edit to make it say true. If it says true, you want it to say false. So if I want it to show up, I have to change this dialog. If it is on the system, a remote desktop, Citrix, it's not on my local C drive, then everybody has to be out of Great Plains to make the change. So once I make the change, I'm going to save the file. I'm going to relaunch it. And this is what I was just saying. It cannot be in a shared location. If it's on my C drive, I can change it. If it's anywhere else, everybody has to be out. All right, to work on the alignment issue, I want to print the W-2s to the screen. I want to choose the printer icon button on the top left. I want to print a dialog box with horizontal and vertical alignments will appear on the right. And I'm going to adjust according to the situation below. So it's telling you how I'm going to move it up. If I need to move it up one line, or if I need to do it partial line, I need to do 0.125 or something in there. If I need to do half of a line, right? So you're going to have to decide how much I have to do. Most people have to play with it and keep reprinting a page until I get it right. So if it prints too high, I want to do positive because it pushes it down. If it prints too low, I need to do a negative to push it higher. So these are how I'm going to get there to move it up and down, left or right. All right, there are rate changes. These are the most recent ones that are found out there, but here we go. Social Security wage limit is going from 167,000 in 2024 to 176,700 for 2025. This will be in the payroll tax table update when it gets pushed in. The reports will reflect the rate that is on the setup window at the time the report is generated. Student food rate or wage limit changes need to be made manually in Microsoft Dynamics GP, HR, payroll, setup, payroll, unemployment tax. And you would choose each state to make the changes, or you change SUDA if I need to make a SUDA change. 401k limits, they're changing for 2025. And you notice changes are necessary and will need to be updated manually in the benefits setup window and roll down the change. The payroll tax update does not maintain them. So what's anticipated right now is, it keeps saying anticipate on the internet right now, is that 2025 increases to 23,500 from 23,000 in 2024. The catch up is going to remain the same. So our total is going to be 31,000 is the most that somebody age 50 or over can take out of their check. This is what the prior year looked like. Employee contribution for the year we're in right now, our max is 23,000. But if you're 50 or over, your maximum would be 30,500. And that is my last slide. A lot of information that I've ran through quickly. Does anybody have any other questions at this point?
Well, Debbie, I have a question for our audience, and I'm going to put it up in the form of a poll question here. But we've talked about a number of different things, and over in the chat, Jessica has shared some of the things that the most current version of GP has. So, for example, a W-2 that prints the boxes, pre-printed forms not required. Um, so one of the things I wanted to find out is if anyone in the audience would like help from LBMC Tech in upgrading their version of the software, if they would like our help in conducting a business process review, which we take a look at your business and how you're using GP and see if there are any gaps, any places where there can be dramatic operational and accounting improvements. And then to inform you of future webinars that are being conducted by LBMC Tech, or if you're just not sure. So if any of those things suit your fancy, please give it a check. And while I've got this up, Debbie, a question came in from Danny. Can you talk about SSA.gov?
All right, SSA.gov, normally it takes about 30 days to get your user ID and password. So let's say that you're new to the company and somebody before you did it last year, they would have been registered with their user their user ID, and their email address to get their site set up so y'all can import your data in. So if you're new to a company, then you need to be immediately working on getting your information that needs to be filled out. There's a form, and you resubmit the information in, and you can get your user ID and passwords that you can import your file. Is
All
that what you're
right.
asking,
Yes.
looking for?
We'll see.
All right, and then I was going to say something about what Jessica said. Jessica, yes, she's right. There are already forms that you can print. You do have to fold all of your paper yourself, make sure that it fits a window, or make labels on envelopes to get those out. A lot of people will just use the pre-printed forms in GP now, fold them like you do a normal letter, put in an envelope, make labels, and put them on and mail them out. Put them on the envelopes and mail it out, and not try to use windows and try to get it to force it to fit in a window envelope, just so you know. But that is a process. Some people decide they still want to have the forms and get the envelopes. So all I have to do is fold them because they're already creased, drop them in, and mail them out. So there are choices that you have to make of how much manual work I want to do to get these out the door.
Got it. All right. I don't see any more questions. So, um, Debbie, thank you so much for your presentation today. It was a lot of very helpful information in a short period of time, and I hope it makes everyone's payroll close a lot simpler this year. And on behalf of LBMC Technology Solutions, I want to wish everybody very happy holidays and a happy new year. And I hope to see you at a future LBMC Tech event. Thanks, everyone.